on mindfulness, but today it's going to be about the 5 pillars to happiness, and that will include mindfulness as well. So I hope you enjoy today's masterclass. If you've not used Zoom before and you're not used to the technology, at the top of the screen there's a little more button. You can click on chat. So there is a chat option. So I have left some space for questions at the end, but if you want to ask any questions as we go throughout, feel free to pop those in the chat box, and I'll do my best to answer those as we go through, or at the end. If not, you're welcome to go on video if you wish. If not, it's automatically set so that you're not. So there's no pressure there either way. And also you're welcome to come off mute and ask me any questions as we go through too. But again, no pressure for that either. So feel free to use all the functionalities that you need. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to use Zoom today rather than the Facebook Live. Just because, you know, it only works if you're on Facebook. And it can be a bit clunky and a bit slow, whereas Zoom has got all the functionality to share the slides and to chat and everything like that along the way. So hopefully it's not been too much of an issue, people getting into Zoom. The recording's really easy as well, so send that out as a link for those that don't know Zoom. That's relatively easy to use. So welcome to the masterclass today. I'm just going to move the slides on. There we go. So by way of introduction, for those of you who don't know me, I am Gemma Sandwell. I'm a mindfulness teacher and I'm a positive psychology practitioner. So my background has always been in psychology and in positive psychology, and that's kind of where I discovered mindfulness and started to learn about the benefits of that, as well as some of this stuff around the science of happiness I'm going to share with you today. And when I talk about happiness, I'm not talking about some happy, clappy, you know, fake smiley faces, yellow smiley faces type happiness. This is about genuine happiness, genuine positive emotion, whether that's experiencing joy, gratitude, and all those sorts of things. So, you know, as part of being human, it's about recognition that we have both of those emotions, and in particular where we may be experiencing more negative emotions or perhaps a neutral emotion, that's where mindfulness can come in, and mindfulness can really help us with that. But positive psychology is really about leveraging those ups, leveraging those kind of happy chemicals, and I'll explain a bit about why that is. So today is all about that. But in terms of kind of an introduction, I wanted to just explain the happiness part, because sometimes that can be a little bit confusing for people. So yeah, that's kind of what it's all about. It's all about that kind of genuine happiness and the ups and the downs. So you may also notice in my picture, and I'm actually wearing it today as well, I've got this tree necklace on. So this necklace is the reason for setting up the happiness branch. This was a gift from my sister-in-law a few years ago, and it kind of described me as a description of a tree with a little card that came with it. And it said around how I reminded her of a tree being calm and grounded, and I'm always learning, always doing something to kind of learn and do something new. So, you know, reaching up to the light and learning, that I had sort of had that analogy. So it was really kind of thanks to this gift that I set up the happiness branch, because the analogy of that tree really meant a lot to me, and I realised there was quite a lot I could do to help people, kind of in the way I'd help myself with some of these tools as well. You know, they help me with anxiety, they helped me change my career completely into a role where I could actually help people with this every day. So some big shifts that I'd made, they all really started with this tree analogy, hence the happiness branch and the logo. So there's an introduction. My website is on this slide. I've also put some links and things at the end, but just feel free to ask me any questions if you want to know more. So I'm going to kick off with some science. It's really important to me to share the science with you, because for me it was really helpful to know that not only was I feeling really good when I was doing these things, but actually that it was having an impact on my brain. So it was actually doing things to help my brain be better as well, and that meant a lot to me, really, to understand that science. And when I do work with corporate areas, you know, they really like that science as well. So it's something that I really like to bring to life and talk about. So to bring it kind of back to the basics of a bit of neuroscience here, so we've basically got 3 parts to our brain. This is bringing it down to real basics. And sometimes I draw this in workshops and it looks like a giant kidney bean. But the kind of three parts to the brain. So we've got the reptilian brain. So if you're a reptile, then that's it for you. The reptilian brain, that's, you know, really basic part of the brain. You've then got the limbic brain, so that's your emotional or feeling brain. So that's the part of the brain that will react and respond. So, you know, someone says something to you, you snap, you know, emotional reaction, that's the limbic brain. And then above that, we've got the neocortex, that rational or thinking brain, rather than emotional or feeling brain. Now that neocortex cannot run on its own, it needs fuel. Needs fuel to run. And if it's not running properly, then that's when the limbic brain will be working, that emotional feeling brain. So thinking about the types of things that give the brain energy, give it that fuel. So, you know, you might think of things like sleeping and eating. Lots of people say caffeine at this point as well. All of those things give our brain energy. But if it gets towards the end of the day, and it's been a while since we've had sleep, probably been a while since we've had caffeine, it might be a while since we've eaten perhaps, and you know, that's when our willpower will be really starting to be running on low, because we haven't got that brain energy. So how do we get that energy for our brain? How do we get that brain fuel? So one of the biggest ways to get the brain fuel is through happiness, through positive emotions. So not only does happiness make us happier, but it actually helps us to be at our best as well, because we're actually getting more fuel for the brain. So positive emotion releases dopamine, which is one of the feel-good chemicals, and that gives our brain fuel to be at its best. So that's the real kind of basic science behind some of this stuff, okay? This is why positive psychology is really important, because as people and as businesses, we can become better when we really harness that power of positive emotion. So I want to talk about the 5 pillars of happiness. These are 5 pillars that I've been able to really bring to life in my life. I've been able to help lots of others with these as well, and I'll come on to kind of sharing some of that as well, some research that I did in a bit. But really, these kind of come from the research of Sean Aker, who wrote The Happiness Advantage. And if you haven't seen his TED Talk, I know Eva's online, Eva has, she's probably heckling unicorn at me at the moment if she wasn't on mute. So Sean talks about when he persuaded his sister that she was a unicorn. So if you haven't seen the video, just watch it for that comedy value. But in Sean's video, he talks about these being 5 really key things. And if we do these 5 things for 21 days, what we do is we build happier habits in the brain. And Sean has found that these things not only make us happier and give us happier habits, but they have an impact on our productivity. They have an impact on sales and businesses as well. They have an impact on how well teams perform. So some really far-reaching impacts, as well as just generally feeling happier as well. So a little bit around what they are. So mindfulness, I'm going to come on to kind of more broadly. I'll put a slot in this specifically to talk about mindfulness and share some, and we'll do a quick exercise as well in that. So I'll park that one for now. Gratitude. So gratitude is all about writing down 3 things every day that you're grateful for. That's kind of the recommended approach for this. But obviously, if you could think of 10 things you're grateful for, that's fantastic. You know, think as many things as you can. But if you can remember 3 things that you've been grateful for throughout the day. So this can be big or small. So for me, a lot of the time, I'm really grateful for a cup of tea. Especially, I wasn't very well over the weekend, so I wasn't able to drink tea. So really appreciating tea right now. So it could be something really big that, you know, someone did something nice for you, or it might just be a simple sort of act of it, you know, a cup of tea. So 3 things that you're grateful for every day. Journaling. So journaling works because not only is it a really effective tool actually at managing your well-being and actually getting thoughts out of your head, you know, and you can keep that quite private as well. But if you journal about the positive experiences that you've had that day, the brain cannot determine whether that's a real experience or not. So if you're journaling about the positive experiences you've had and you're writing them down, and even when you're going back through and you're reading that, the brain will genuinely think it's happened. So you'll re-experience that positive emotion again. So you're further strengthening those happy chemicals in the brain. So I was on a mindfulness retreat this weekend, and I did some journaling every day in this book. So when we get into the mindfulness part, if anyone has any questions about that retreat as well, I've got my journal here, and I'll share some of that insight with you. So the fourth one is acts of kindness. So acts of kindness are really important because we've got these things in our brain called mirror neurons. And when we do an act of kindness to somebody, what happens is when we see their response to our kindness, the mirror neurons in the brain mirror their response. So if we see them suddenly light up with joy, then we feel really joyful as well. It's just kind of the way our empathy and our brains work. So we re-experience that positive emotion by kind of giving that act of kindness to somebody else. So that's why acts of kindness can really work. And then finally, exercise. So I was listening to a podcast. I was travelling back from Surrey at the weekend, and I was listening to a podcast where I heard some recent research on this, actually, that they found that doing exercise every day for, I think it was something like 60 days, just like a little bit of exercise, was actually more powerful than taking an antidepressant every day. So they found that the results of the exercise were actually strengthening the brain pathways, as well as kind of creating those feel-good endorphins that you know that you get from exercise. So that's why they're all really important. And as I said, they've all come from Sean Aker and Sean's research there as well. And they're things that can really work for you if you give them a go. But this wasn't really enough for me. I wanted to understand how these impacted on people, and whether they would have an impact. You know, I kind of wanted to find this. I'm a bit of a scientist at heart, really. So I wanted to find out what would happen with these. So I did my own research on this. So in my research, I got some very willing volunteers who I went out and asked a few people. I say a few people, it went actually totally viral. So I ended up with hundreds of people in the end. I said, do you want to be happier? Of course, their reply was yes. So they came along and they took part, and they carried out these activities for 21 days. And we tracked their well-being at the start of the 21 days and the end of the 21 days. And found these results that are here on this slide. So overall, their happiness increased by 15.3% across the group. In some, it was dramatic, and for others, sort of less so. But I sort of went and studied the ones that were dramatic as well to find out, you know, what had happened for them. What were those dramatic things that had happened, which has given me some really useful insight. And I've actually fed that into some of my happiness products that I offer, which has been really great. But interestingly, people were really honest with me, and what they said was, some people said, do you know what, Gemma, I can do all 5. I didn't have the time for that in the day with, you know, trying to get the kids ready for school and everything else. So those that did just 3 activities, but they did them really well and they committed to those 3 activities, it still had a significant impact. I think it was about 15.1%. So there wasn't much in it. So obviously doing all 5 will be the most beneficial, but actually doing 3 and doing them really well can really help your happiness. And if you look there, you know, some of the highest areas, one of the biggest ones was autonomy. So just people felt like they had more control over their lives, which seemed to make a massive difference to their well-being, as well as their satisfaction with life and their self-acceptance as well. So, you know, something in there around self-esteem there as well, I think that it had a bit of an impact on. So hopefully you found that helpful, a bit of research there, a bit of science to kind of back some of this stuff up. And I'm going to move on to more specifically one of the activities, which is mindfulness. I imagine that some of you have practiced some mindfulness in one way or another. If you haven't, don't worry. Here is your opportunity, because we're going to do a short mindfulness exercise in a moment. But this is the definition of mindfulness that I wanted to draw your attention to. So mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, but non-judgmentally. So I've highlighted the words non-judgmentally here, because I think it's really important to note that Actually, if you're being judgmental, you're not being mindful. So when I first started to practice mindfulness, I thought it was about somehow clearing my mind and not having any thoughts in there. And when I soon realised that I was a very busy person with lots of busy thoughts, I started to think that I couldn't practice mindfulness. I couldn't understand how people could practice it. And it didn't really make sense to me. And then I saw this definition by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and I thought, oh, hang on, I'm making loads of judgments here. I'm saying I can't practice it. I'm saying, why am I having all these busy thoughts, judging those, beating myself up about being a busy person, not being able to clear my mind and all those things. And actually, mindfulness is never kind of says this is about clearing your mind. It's about paying attention on purpose in the present moment and doing it non-judgmentally. And as soon as I let go of this judgment, that's when I really started to feel the benefits. That's when I really started to kind of feel like I was at my best. And I can now get to the point where there's nothing in my mind, which is quite scary. But that's not through this trying to push it away. It's not through trying to push it out, but actually kind of welcome it in and acknowledge it and appreciate it. So one of the things that I put in my journal actually, when I was on retreat this weekend, I was on retreat with Ed Halliwell, who you might have heard of. He's written a few mindfulness books, great guy. And he sort of said, imagine the difficulty that's like here. He said, imagine that you're like, oh, hello, difficulty. You come in and sort of, welcoming it in as if it's a friend. And that's where that non-judgment part really comes. So when I was on retreat this weekend, I was actually really quite unwell. And you might think, oh no, that really ruined the retreat. And whilst it felt a bit like that at the time, actually it taught me a lot about being really accepting of it. I was unwell, I couldn't change it. And I just had to do what was right for me and my body. Parts of the retreat were silent. And so, I couldn't turn to the person next to me and say, I'm really unwell. So all I could do was, I missed some of the mindfulness practice because I just had to go and sleep. And that's what my body needed. It was non-judgmental. It was, I'm unwell and I just need to sleep. So hopefully that kind of brings to life the non-judgment a bit. And it's certainly something that I've had to really practice. Something that's really helped me with my anxiety. And, throughout our mindfulness course, we kind of bring different themes of non-judgment in. So, whether it's kindness, acceptance, taking a step back from that perhaps thought or what's going on is really important. So for me and my anxiety, being able to take a step back from it and, not judge it and realise that, it sometimes is part of me and that's who I am and that's just my body trying to keep me safe, that has really helped me. So if you haven't heard of Jon Kabat-Zinn as well, he is responsible for bringing mindfulness from the East into the Western world. So he's brought it into medicine and into science and into the practices that we have today. So that's all thanks to Jon. And I actually got to meet Jon last year as well, which was like people get really excited about going to Wembley and seeing their favourite rock band, but I went to London and saw Jon Kabat-Zinn, and that was my celebrity kind of moment done for the year. So it might sound a bit sad, but that was really good for me anyway to do that. Okay, so a bit of science again here around mindfulness, and I find this is really important actually in helping people to understand what's actually going on for them and how it can help them. So it's kind of three main things here. So the first one is the prefrontal cortex, this bit at the front of the brain. When we practice mindfulness, that increases in grey matter, it increases in size, that prefrontal cortex. And because we're getting more grey matter in that area of the brain, we're better able to manage our emotions and we're better able to solve problems because there's physically more brain area to do so. Then the second area of the brain that we're growing is an area called the hippocampus. If anyone came to my last masterclass, you would have heard me refer to this as the hippopotamus because I could never remember the name, so I just thought hippopotamus and it would remind me every time. So the good news about practicing mindfulness is we grow that area of the brain, we grow the hippopotamus or the hippocampus, and that helps us to learn and remember things better because again, the size of the brain becomes larger. So 2 areas of the brain that we are growing. And then a third area of the brain that we're actually we're shrinking is the amygdala. So the amygdala is the fight or flight response in the brain. It's at the base of the skull, and this is there from caveman days. Okay, so our brains have not changed much at all since caveman days. So we would have gone out of our caves to hunt, and there was a chance that that tiger may just attack us. So being able to fight or run away from that tiger, or maybe freeze, not sure about that one with the tiger, that would have protected us from harm, that would have saved our lives. But if you think about the kinds of things that cause us stress and anxiety nowadays, being able to fight or run away from those situations. So I know I've had work meetings before that have made me really anxious. You know, I'm turning up to that meeting and my body is getting me ready to fight or run away, you know, not particularly useful at all. In terms of what you want, you actually want the opposite. So your brain is shutting down in that stage. Your brain is shutting down and saying, let's get ready to fight or flight, or, you know, perhaps store fat, you know, saying we need to go. So the good news is in mindfulness is we can shrink that amygdala down in size, and that's how we become more resilient when we practice mindfulness. So that's the good news about that. But don't worry, you won't shrink it down so much that it doesn't work. You know, if something happens and you need to respond to it, then you absolutely will. But it's those smaller things that cause us stress and anxiety that we become more resilient to. And this is something that I've personally been able to do with mindfulness. So back in October, I spoke at a conference with 300 people. I would not even speak up in a room of 10 people. If you'd sort of said, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, we want you to run a meeting with 10 people, I would have said, no way, my anxiety could not handle that, and I don't think I can handle that. But actually in October, I really kind of proved myself wrong there. And by practicing mindfulness and practicing some of these happiness activities as well, has really helped to grow my brain and to reduce the size of my amygdala. I think if you put me in a brain scanner, hopefully it would be smaller. It certainly feels like it's had an impact, and it's enabled me to do so many more things than I ever thought I could do. So that's been really positive. But I like to think the other things have happened as well. I like to think that I remember more things, but I am human, I do still forget some things. So there's some of the science. I hope that is useful for you. If you do have any questions about the science or any of this as we are going through, do feel free to type them in the chat box as well, and I'll do my best to kind of answer them as we go along. Okay, so we're going to do a short mindfulness activity now, just to bring some of this to life. So all I would like you to do right now is to just bring in all of your senses, okay? So just firstly, just starting with the sense of sight. So wherever you might be today, right now, whatever time of day it is where you are, just bringing in the sense of sight and just looking around you and just seeing what you notice. So not just on the screen, but actually around you, perhaps in the room that you're in. Maybe seeing if you can notice anything new that you've not noticed before. Bringing in the sense of sound, so not just my voice and sound of my annoying clock, sorry, but you know, sounds that are close, sounds that are further away as well. So just tuning into the sense of sound. Tuning into the sense of touch. So just noticing the weight of the body on the chair, perhaps the feet on the floor, wherever wherever you are today, whatever posture you're in, just noticing the weight of the body. And just noticing what effect gravity is having on the body as well. And noticing perhaps temperature. There might be a warm or cold breeze, or the temperature in the room. Perhaps any sensations in the body. Perhaps there's a tingling. Perhaps you're feeling hot or you're feeling cold. Just tuning into that sense of touch. Tuning into the sense of smell. So just noticing any smells that are present for you right now. Maybe nice, maybe not so nice, but just noticing them. And then noticing the sense of taste, if there's any tastes present for you right now. So you've just tuned in with all of your 5 senses. Now that is a mindfulness activity. So if you haven't practiced mindfulness before, congratulations, you've just practiced mindfulness. So that's something that you can do anywhere at any point in time. So whether you are perhaps driving to work or, you know, sitting somewhere waiting for something. This is one I use a lot in queues. So used to be really, really impatient in queues. Actually, there's 2 things, because I realised it the other day, queues and filling up my car with petrol I get really impatient with, especially this time of year when it's really cold and you're standing outside the car trying to fill it up. So I try and notice as many things as I can see. Sometimes I will like count the letters on signs to kind of bring in the sense of sight and see what I can notice around me. I see if I can spot any nature. And just kind of tuning into all those senses. So you can do that kind of anywhere at any time. So that is kind of a little bit of a window into some of the mindfulness activities that you can do. We'll talk a bit more about these on the course and kind of building up more mindfulness habits, but you can do this anywhere, okay, at any point in time. So this is a mindfulness exercise to help to bring you into the present moment. Okay, and then we've got some mindfulness myths here, which I hear quite commonly actually, you might be surprised. So the first one is you don't have to be sat on a cushion saying okay? Especially the type of teaching that I do as a mindfulness teacher, it really is about, being in a posture that works for you and being comfortable. The most important thing is kindness. So, you can practice that 5 senses activity anywhere. And you absolutely don't have to be sat on a cushion. So one of the things that was quite apparent for me, which I journaled about this weekend at my retreat, was that because I felt unwell, it was really uncomfortable sitting in certain postures. So I kind of alternated between sitting on a chair, sat on a cushion on the floor, laying on the floor with a blanket over me sometimes, and that was okay. That was completely accepted. Did some mindful walking, because actually, at times when the mind is busy, mindfully walking can be a really great way to do it. So it's not just about sat on a cushion for hours on end saying, obviously if you want to sit on a cushion and say, that's absolutely fine. You can enjoy that. But that's not what this is, not what this is about. As a teacher, I'm very much about bringing mindfulness into your life and creating a habit. And actually sitting and meditating for hours on end just isn't the reality for lots of us with our busy lives. So, busting that myth, it does not have to be sat on a cushion in the corner of a room somewhere with a Buddha statue saying, although I have actually got a little Buddha statue here, but I don't really sit with him. I've not named him, perhaps I should think of a little name for him. Anyway, I could go off on a tangent about the Buddha statue. So the second one is there isn't a right way to do it. Okay, so I've heard things over the years, you must be sat in a dark room and you must clear your mind of thoughts. All of that is rubbish in my opinion. The most important thing to do is to be non-judgmental. It's about non-judgment and kindness, and that's the most important thing. So if you're paying attention, think about the definition, paying attention in that present moment non-judgmentally. And actually, if you're not being kind, then you're probably being judgmental. So, I hear lots of, I can't do it, I don't have the time. Well, actually, if you don't, there's lots of apps out there. And, when I learned mindfulness, I just used to do 10 minutes every morning. If you don't even have 10 minutes, then, do 3 minutes. It's better to do lots of little sessions rather than trying to squeeze a whole lot in and then beating yourself up about not doing it. So non-judgment and kindness is absolutely key. There is not a right way to do it. It's just it's about practice. Number 3 is not necessarily relaxation practice. So yes, it may make you feel relaxed when you do it sometimes. Sometimes it might not. So I've had to be really really quite careful sometimes when people kind of market stuff for me, and you know, especially if I'm doing events and things, and people will say, come along and relax, and I'm like, not necessarily. So it is about awareness. So if I'd have come to, you know, come to learn mindfulness to relax, I would have had a real shock when actually, you know, it made me notice my anxiety some days quite a lot, and actually I had some things I needed to do to deal with that anxiety. So it's not always about relaxation. So relaxation is more of an outcome. So because we're doing all those changes in the brain and that science that I just shared with you, and we're looking at switching our attention between alert and relaxed, we will over time become more relaxed, and we do sleep better when we practice mindfulness. You know, it certainly helps us create those habits, but we might not always find it relaxing when we're paying attention in that present moment. So on the retreat this weekend, when I went out and did my walking, there's lots of planes going overhead, you know, and that could have been quite off-putting, but I kind of use those in my awareness, and by paying attention to them, thinking about where I'd like to go on holiday as well, looking at the planes, thinking I wonder where they're going. So curiosity in there as well, I think that was important. But it's not necessarily relaxation practice, so I just wanted to make that really clear. And the last one, you are not your thoughts. I would not believe the amount of conversations I have where I have to ask, what are the facts? What are the facts in this situation, okay? Thoughts are just thoughts. They are not facts, okay? Just because you've had a thought, it doesn't make it a reality. And, you know, we create that story around that. I don't know if anyone's heard me talk about the kind of 2 arrows analogy. So when we have some kind of pain, imagine it's like being shot with an arrow. When we put the suffering on top of that pain, it's like we're shooting ourselves with a second arrow. So if we were shot with an arrow, we wouldn't take an arrow and shoot ourselves with a second one. But that's what we do all the time with pain and suffering. And by stepping back from our thoughts, we can kind of think about how to respond to them. So I talk in the course a bit about waterfalls, and actually imagining that you're behind a waterfall, or if you prefer, kind of behind a cinema screen, and you're watching those thoughts play out. So you're not kind of going into them and getting involved in them, but through this kind of non-judgmental awareness, you can take a bit of a step back and then make that conscious decision to respond to it. So we do a bit of work on that on the course, and kind of thinking about what's between you and that thought, you know, what's actually going on there, so you can respond. So there's some myths that I've hopefully busted there for you, but do feel free to ask any questions if they are not clear. So as a reminder, the 5 pillars of happiness here. So mindfulness I've just gone into quite in-depth detail talking about, hopefully that has been useful, and doing that mindfulness exercise. But remember, in mindfulness, it's about regular, frequent, rather than trying to do a whole load of mindfulness and not making it sustainable. So this is about creating habits. So I'm all about creating mindfulness habits in your life that fit around your lifestyle. You know, this is not about, you know, trying to be a Buddha and sitting in a corner of a room, as I said. So that's mindfulness. Gratitude, so 3 things every day as a reminder, writing down 3 things every day that you're grateful for. Journaling, and in particular journaling about the positive experiences so that you relive that positive emotion. The act of kindness, so remember the mirror neurons in the brain that mirror the response when you do an act of kindness to somebody. And lastly, exercise as well, those feel-good endorphins that come from exercise. So with exercise, the important thing to note is do what's right for you within your limits. So, you know, whether that's mindful movements such as Tai Chi, yoga, and all those great things, doing what's right for you. You know, if you run marathons, and that might, you know, your marathon training might be your exercise. But, you know, if you don't do exercise at the moment, maybe just a gentle walk or something just to get the brain sort of thinking differently, and to get the body moving is why that's really important. So any questions about any of those, do let me know. And then I just wanted to share with you a bit of detail about my 8 weeks of mindfulness course. So really lots of things I've talked about today are really about building that habit. So over the 8 weeks, we really start to build on the mindfulness habit. So we start with switching off from automatic pilot. and then work through some different habits that that we can build up over time. So the course is run over Zoom, which is what we're using today, every week, and there is a private Facebook group, and I keep the group sizes really small as well, so they're a really supportive environment. So you get the support of me and the group in between the sessions, and the sessions are run over Zoom. It's your choice whether you want to go on video or not, but I try and run it over video so it feels like we're in the room, it feels like we're face to face. And as you can see from the comments here on this slide, this is just some of the feedback from my website and from my page. People really love that environment, that they can do it in the comfort of their own home. It's recorded every week, so if you can't make a session, it's automatically recorded and it gets sent out to you. So again, I've got quite a few parents who are part of the course, so if it doesn't quite work out with bedtimes and they can't come along, then they listen along to it afterwards, and they're able to have the support of the group and the discussion over Facebook, rather than trying to come out in the evening and try and come to an event that's really difficult, and they can't get childcare and all of those things, and then not having the support of the group in between. So this is about being really flexible. As I said, for me as a mindfulness teacher, it's about fitting mindfulness around your life, not trying to completely transform it and do something different, but creating habits that work for you. So that's why I wanted to offer it so flexibly, so people can do it in this way, but still get those really high levels of support that you would get with the face-to-face group. So that's kind of an outline of the course itself. And then I wanted to share with you a special offer for those joining the masterclass, and for those watching the recording, this is only valid for the next 48 hours. So I'm going to offer you 10% off the course price. So I've rounded it down a little bit to be extra kind. So it's going to be £222 instead of £247, and the recommended retail price for the course is actually £550. So as I said, for that price, you get all of the Zoom sessions, plus the recordings, the access to the private group. You'll get a workbook, really comprehensive workbook to take you through the 8 weeks, and a journal as well, where you can journal your experiences, and all of the home practice activities to go and take away with you as well. All the sessions get recorded and posted on the group, so you'll have access to all of those recordings to watch back as well. So if you are interested in snapping up that offer in the next 48 hours, I've only got a few spaces left on the course. Do pop me a message or drop me an email, or contact me via the website, and I'll get that sorted out for you with the discount taken off. And then the first 5 people that get in touch with me after this masterclass, I'm going to offer a very special mindful mini-me taster call. So these were like hugely popular last time, and they were all gone within minutes. So I'm going to offer these free again for the first 5 people to get in touch. And this is a little short mini mindfulness session for you, where I'll work with you just very briefly to think about what you might want to get out of the session, and we'll do a short mindfulness practice in there as well. So first 5 people to contact me, once they're gone, they're gone. We'll get those for free as well. So the link to the website's on there if you haven't got it already. So I'm going to pause there for any questions that you might have. Feel free to type the questions in the chat box, or to come off mute and ask your question. Anyone watching the recording, if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to post them on the Facebook group, so other people can see your responses, or contact me directly through the contact form on the website, or on Facebook, or any of the other social media platforms as well, and I will do my best to answer them. So I'm just going to pause now in case anyone who's on the class would like to ask any questions. Oh, thank you, Eva, for your lovely feedback. Oh, no questions from you, Eva. Thank you, super clear. Thanks very much. Okay, so I'll take that as no one has any questions. So that's that's job done then. So I'll leave it there. Anyone watching the recording, as I said, feel free to ask your questions by any means, email, social media, via my website, just get in touch and I'll do my best to help you as much as I can. But I'll leave it there. Have a great mindful